Yeah, yeah. Sorry, Mike. We do
Mike, you
most
can
of them
say
right.
anything you want,
Yeah.
and people are hearing it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, some crazy shit goes on
So,
here.
Mike, what we normally do is to let people start to come in. The first minute or two is the filter in period where whoever the guest is tells jokes to
Oh,
entertain
great.
the early people as we
I
are we
didn't
talking about.
prepare any material, man.
Yeah, what do you got? Come on, you have anything funny? Anything,
No, I didn't prepare anything. I just woke up. I'm not feeling great, but
Oh no.
I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy to
Yeah.
be here. You could wake me up in a drunken stupor in the middle of the night. I could give you 5 minutes about what a disgrace it is that Tobias Harris doesn't shoot when he's got 10 feet of space.
That's right.
So I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
The biggest
Mike-
joke of all.
So give it another minute. It is a Saturday morning filter in, which usually takes a little bit longer than the post game ones. Mike, have you noticed that CJ doesn't have any hair anymore? And
I have noticed that.
Yeah.
I caught like part of the story. It was, I think it's what he got a bad haircut and then you just decided to chop it all off.
Well, he was living in a new area and he didn't have a barber, and he somehow wound up at a barber that was a 75-year-old lady, and which I've never even. I have nothing against old ladies, and I've had women cut
I
my hair
do.
before, but never like an old lady. And she screwed it up basically, and CJ came home and cut all his hair off.
That's right. That is right. What happened?
It's good. At least you get a preview of what you would look like bald.
Yeah.
I've always wondered like what would happen if I lost all my hair. Could I pull it off?
Yeah. Generally, my dad and his dad have their hair still, so I've never had to worry about that too much. But so it's nice to kind of dabble on the side, like what would happen if this were to be the case, but. Then it comes back eventually.
We got to find that lady. Get her on the pod. It's going to be a long season. Here we go. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS, and brought to you by SeatGeek. Get $20 off your first purchase by using code RTRS. Body Bio, supplements for a healthier life. Use code RTRS20 for 20% off any order at bodybio.com. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged, and Kinetic Skateboarding. Get free tunes for the life with the purchase of any snowboard right there at Kinetic. On the show today, we are deep into the most meaningless, frustrating season in almost a decade, and with no big trade on the horizon, we talk with Mike O'Connor about whether, that's right, the Sixers should just pack it in this year and tank again, just for 1 year. We'll talk with Mike O'Connor, maybe check in on CJ's new haircut, hit the mailbag as always. Before we get going, I mentioned Kinetic Skateboarding. They have their like basketball series of Kinetic gear that comes out a couple times a year. Sweatpants, zip up hoodie, and pullover hoodie. They just put it out again right in time for Christmas time. This is great stuff. I know CJ wears the hoodie every once in a while. I have sweatpants that I wear every once in a while. Great. The gray sweats, the gray hoodie, and then the black hoodie. Great. KineticSkateboarding.com, the basketball series from Kinetic. And if you order online, use promo code Dave Silver for 9.1% off your first order. Without any further ado, Amos and the Chef.
Larry, sweetie, the man is here. Say the name. I say the name. I say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. 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 I say the name. I say the name. Say the name.
Rights to Ricky Sanchez forever.
Good morning. Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who is the only true Mike on this particular episode of the podcast. That is Mike Levin. Morning, buddy.
Hello.
How are you?
Mike O'Connor. I'm introducing Mike O'Connor.
Okay.
He's here. He's basketball. We're ready to go. We're getting into the ins and outs of it. That's what Spike wants. We're talking about defending the pick and roll. We're talking about hedging, blitzing. We're doing it. What's up, Mike?
If Jerry Colangelo were listening, he would say, I am a basketball. That is what I am. That is what I do. And I'm so excited to talk about the basketball.
You know, before we get into the tank thing, actually, which you wrote about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, whether the Sixers should stealth tank this year, there's been a lot of consternation about Doc Rivers. And you were, I think, toward especially the last year of his work here, you were fairly critical of Brett Brown. I would say of the fans were mad at Brett Brown all the time, but of the writer people, you seem to be the most critical toward the end. And now, and I think generally everybody, it's easier to blame the coach than it is to face the reality of what the roster is. But I'm curious as to what you think, how you think Rivers is doing this year, all things considered.
Definitely not great. And, you know, I still view him as an above average coach. I definitely still would say, all things considered, he's a better coach than Brett Brown. But this year it's really, not only has there been like some weird schematic stuff and the rotations are frustrating, but like, I think everyone is just really over how he handles the media. And he's just got like a lot of like, pedantic habits, and he'll just like not talk down to you, but he'll just like use these little jokes or these little one-liners that it's like, it's supposed to smooth things over, and it just like, so doesn't. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think that he's, you know, solely responsible for their struggles. There's so many reasons why this team has been disappointing, but no, definitely there's a lot of room to criticize Doc here.
That was one thing that Brett had, you know, that I thought bought him a lot of time, you know, with media, is how he handled media. Like, aside from my father, who he berated a couple of times once on I hope people have the maybe video of this. He like obliterated him on the field of the Link before an Eagles game once. And I don't know if anyone ever caught it, but by and large, Brett was really good to the media, and Doc seems like over all of it in general. It seems like over everything. I sometimes wonder if we'll wake up one morning and he will have just like left. You know? Yeah. He just doesn't seem like he's having a good time.
Brett, you could ask Brett the dumbest question. You know, you could know nothing about basketball, and he would give you the most dignified answer and just like go through. He would like, if your question didn't make sense, he would like turn it into something else and give you like a long story about that. He was just like the most dignified NBA coach handling the media. Doc, you know, as we saw with the Ben thing, it's just like, I don't know why he feels the need or feels like he can just like poo-poo whenever the media brings up concerns about Ben or about other stuff. Like it was, the Ben thing last year was the most unprecedented coddling of a professional athlete I've ever seen, ever.
In what way?
Every single time a media member asked, hey, does Ben need to do this? Ben, what do you think about Ben? It was like immediately into a monologue about, you guys don't appreciate this guy. You don't know how special he is. You just don't get it. Like, how are we watching a series where the other team is intentionally fouling him and putting him on the foul line, like as a strategy for them to win the game? And it's like, this guy is above criticism. Like we saw him disappearing in the early stages of the Hawks series. People ask Doc, you know, what can you do differently with Ben or whatever? And he's just like, you don't see all the things that Ben gives us. You don't see all the positive. It's like, you know, the peak Ben Simmons stan on Twitter is like coaching the Sixers. Like it's ridiculous. Like you never hear people who know the first thing about basketball talking about Ben Simmons in that way. Like, I'm not saying you can't like Ben Simmons more than probably we do, but I just thought the way that Doc handled that was so ridiculous and so preachy, and it just turned a lot of people off from him.
Yeah, and that's why it seemed ridiculous when like one comment, a stupid comment, like you don't need to say it after the Hawks series when everyone was like very upset at losing to a worse team. When they go like, oh, I don't know if he can be a point guard on a championship team. like it just doesn't negate how he was acting toward Ben the whole season in my mind. Whereas it's like, yeah, he was really like being extremely complimentary to the point of like hard-headedness and stuff. And yeah, I mean, just Doc's just been there so many times. He's been doing this for, when did he start coaching the Magic? In the 90s, late 90s,
late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. And it's just like, he's been doing it a long time. I think he's won a championship. He's been there. He's lost in spectacular fashion. He's won in impressive ways. And I think he's just like, I can kind of just say whatever I want now. And there's not that many coaches that do that anymore. Not that many long-running coaches. Not that many coaches that have had as long of tenures as he has at multiple separate places. And so I think there is a little bit of like, I don't feel that, he like, coddling is a word that has gotten, a lot of play about Ben over his career, but it's for him to like, he shoots from the hip. Like he says what he feels like he's saying. And there doesn't seem to be a ton of like, I can tell the players what it is because I was a player and I've been coaching this long and I coached for these guys. There's a little bit of just old guy inside the NBA type vibe there.
Yeah. The moment that I realized that his brain was just like broken with the Ben thing was after, I think it was game 3 or 4 against the Hawks where Ben said himself, he was like, I really need to be more aggressive. Like, I'm not doing enough. I really need to be more aggressive on offense. And somebody asked Doc about that. And he was like, no, I don't think so. Nope. Doesn't need to be more aggressive at all. I don't know what you guys are seeing. Like at least make like a dignified statement of just like, yeah, maybe he does, or he helps out in a lot of ways, but I would like to see him get to the line more, whatever, anything like that. Like, just like engage with it in like a serious way. Like, I don't know. He just started to sound like the insane people, like in my Twitter mentions or whatever. Anytime I say the slightest negative thing about Ben, like that was what Doc became. It was nuts.
There's a part in Breaking Bad that people, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's the second to last episode. People believe that something happens in the second to last episode and that makes the finale moot. That someone has. There's a dream, whatever. I'm not going to spoil it for people. You should have watched it by now, but I'll be good. I know, but I'm not going to do it. And that's basically what it feels like. We died in the Hawk series. We all collectively just died, and there's nobody knows, and there's just no way to prove that any of this is real anymore.
Right? Yeah. I remember the last Doc thing. I remember Rights to Ricky Sanchez, as Ike Reese used to say, when Doc would always say, "I'm not worried about shooting. You guys are." Like, that's what he would just say all the time. Ike would go, "Oh, you're going to worry about it. Like, trust me, there will come we've been here. You haven't. You're going to worry about it." So, and then, so as the last thing before we get into anything, because I think this is the next logical step, is that one of the players, and I didn't ask you to prepare for this, so if you're not actually prepared, that's fine. One of the couple players that has been talked about in terms of this big trade, the star player that they're going to acquire, that has been talked about the most is Damian Lillard, who is not quite as bad as he was at the beginning of the year, but has had probably his worst season in 5 or 10 years. I guess. What's that?
Had a great game last night. He had like 43.
Right. He's been better, but still overall, when you look at like his body of work, he hasn't been quite as good. They got to win over the next year or two anyway, but I guess, would you have any pause making that trade for him, given his body type and how he scores, and that the bad year is coming now?
Yeah, I would actually. And because it's not just this season. We saw him in the Olympics. It was really bad. And somebody reported that this has been an issue for, a year or two, and he should have had surgery, but he decided not to. And
the abdomen thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody reported that. I can't remember who. But yeah, that's a real concern. I mean, I know, like you said, he's playing a little bit better lately, but we kind of just haven't seen him look like Damian Lillard in 7-8 months. And that's not good. That's really not a good thing to be going that long without looking like yourself. Yeah, I mean, I still think it's without question a chance that you take. And if we were going to even tie it into the whole tank discussion, you could sit him and, whatever, you could have surgery it could just, work out. But no, I would definitely be a little bit concerned about that, because I don't know, anytime you just see someone struggling for that long, it's not a good sign.
Right.
You hear about the, everyone's done the tanking ruin sports, and we'll get to it. But if they trade for Dame Lillard and then decide to sit him the rest of the season, I think that would be objectively, I think that would be a problematic way to handle it.
It would be a fun thing for us to defend and say is the right thing to do. It would be a new hill for us to die on. We haven't had a good hill to die on in a long time. It'd be a great.
Well, again, I've been dead for a long time. So
yeah. Before we start, Mike, the place that sponsors all of Mike's writing, Body Bio, is a sponsor of this episode. We love Body Bio, right there in Jersey, family-owned, family-operated company, supplement company, just trying to help out your immune system. That's what it's trying to do. It's more important than ever. Immune system. I'm going to talk about two things that Body Bio has that helps your immune system: Elite and liposomal vitamin C. So Elite just helps hydrate you. You can't just drink water all day. That's good. You got to drink water all day. But hydration is a mix of electrolytes and water. And what you don't want to do is drink those sports drinks that have artificial colors, artificial flavors, bunch of junk in them. Elite is just electrolytes. You take a capful, you put it in whatever you drink once a day, keeps you hydrated the right way. Help me. I used to have cramps in my legs all the time when I was driving. Imagine that. I would get a cramp on my foot while I was driving. It's horrible, but I don't get them anymore because of Elite. It's just Elite and liposomal vitamin C. Vitamin C, obviously important to your immune system, but the stuff that you get in food and the stuff that you get in supplements is water soluble, which means it comes in and then you piss it right out, as you see when you take one of those vitamin C supplements and your pee turns like bright yellow or something. So liposomal vitamin C doesn't release until it gets into your cells. It's important. So you end up more of it stays in your body, even though the number of the milligrams is the same. More of it actually stays in your body, so it's better. Elite, liposomal vitamin C, bodybio.com. Promo code RTRS20 will give you 20% off everything. We've talked about Calm. They have a bunch of different supplements. We love Body Bio. We love them for sponsoring us. We love them for sponsoring MOC, and we love them because they're a great company. Promo code RTRS20 gets you 20% off anything at Body Bio. Bodybio.com. So, Mike, the tank discussion. Let me ask you, if you were thrust into Daryl Morey's job right now, and it was your decision to do it, how seriously would you consider the idea of just sort of throwing this year away, and tanking this year, and sort of buying time until the beginning of next season? Like, how realistic is it an option to you?
And before you answer, they're currently 15-15, right at that 500 line. They are
one we love.
We love it. They're 6.5 games back of Brooklyn. They are currently 8th in the East, but between the Knicks, let's say the Knicks, because the Pacers seem like they're calling it, but between the Knicks and Charlotte at 6, those are 6 teams separated there. There's a 2-game separation, so there's a big clump. But the East is pretty, at least a lot of decent teams are in the East, so it's going to be a long season of clumping. I leave you to answer the question now, Michael.
With that setup,
I would consider it very seriously. I think there's a number of things you could base it off of. I thought that our friend Derek Bodner put it very well, where he said this about the Ben Simmons trade, but I could apply this to the context of tanking or not. Where he said, it's not about saving a year of Joel Embiid's prime. It's about saving Joel Embiid's prime, period.
Yeah.
And so that, in terms of this tank discussion, kind of like you could look at it and say, all right, let's say they trade Ben for someone who has, the most utility right now, like McCollum or whoever, someone like that. And they really go for it this season and they get the 5th seed and they lose in the second round. And then it's like, then what? You still don't have anything resembling a championship team, and you don't have any path to it at all. It's really hard to get that next guy and to get off of the guys who clearly aren't going to be that number 2 guy like Tobias and CJ if you have them on the books. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something you should really seriously discuss, and there are so many different things that you could do in this little 1-year tank retool that would just like shift your trajectory in a huge way, right? Like obviously the biggest thing I brought up is trading Tobias. And as I was writing that article, I realized that it really boiled down to that. That's what this discussion is about, right? Like there's some nice little benefits, right? Like you could get something for Danny Green, and you could get something for maybe Kork Maz or Niang or whatever, and that's all nice. And it'd be cool to get like the 8th pick in the draft, and that would be, pretty nice. But what this really allows you to do is to trade Tobias and get off of that contract and set yourself up for a much better future in terms of flexibility, and just also not having Tobias, because in my opinion, he's not someone who can be a top 3 player on a championship team. So I would consider it super seriously. I think that, it's a miniature version of what you could have said when the process started, which was like, this might be a dead end, this core. And it's not easy to see the way where they could transform this roster on a dime. Like, obviously the reason that they're waiting on the Ben thing is in hopes of getting a guy like Beal or Lillard or someone like that. And if they can, this is all moot and you go to try and contend immediately. But I just see a lot of benefits of how much you could free yourself up, and how many useful assets you could acquire in 1 year, and just like totally shift your trajectory if you just decide to kind of punt on this year.
Can I play devil's advocate and say that Tobias isn't even helping you win that much this year? So my counter to that would be, it's going to cost you an asset to get off of Tobias, most likely. That would be my opinion. And then you are not only not making yourself worse potentially, but you are also costing yourself an asset that could be important in a trade. And wouldn't the most important part of this be sitting Embiid? Like I wonder how you tank, but to me, the most important part is you'd have to tell yourself, I'm not playing this guy anymore, because with him on the court, it will be too hard to tank. And I guess just don't think Tobias is that like consequential to winning or losing.
Yeah, that's what I was texting MOC about, was this only happens if Embiid gets hurt. If Embiid gets hurt, or the rib thing that he's dealing with, the side thing ends up being a more serious thing that just isn't going away, or whatever it is, then you execute this plan. You just can't do it with Embiid on the court, because he's too good. The point of trading Tobias isn't like, oh great, we're going to lose games now. The point is to just get off the contract.
Well, yeah, of course.
And I do think I think some team, I think like Sacramento would take Tobias and not have to give you like negative stuff. You get like Bagley and other expiring shit, but I don't think it would be like we're demanding more picks for Tobias. They're trying to win now. He's a helpful player for them to win now. Yeah, I mean, you get off of Seth, you trade Seth first off, you trade Dan, you trade everybody, but it only happens for me if Embiid is injured, because he is too good on his own to take this team into the lottery. And I just think like he missed the first 2 seasons of his career. He's not a guy that's like dying to miss more time by choice. If it happens to happen, then absolutely that's the lever you press. But I can't imagine him being like, he's having a miserable time. Like, I think it's pretty clear that he, especially the last month or so, maybe since he got COVID, like he's just been not enjoying this, and realizes that like the Ben trade is taking longer than it's supposed to, and he's just on a team that's not going anywhere right now. But it's hard to imagine him willfully being like, just take me out. I'm going to sit until next September.
So, I mean, I think it's not just a binary of like, if Embiid has some severe injury or something like that. It's like, what if he, they're like in 2 months, they're 500 and he has like a nagging knee injury, and he's just kind of like, all right, like if you guys want to go to Daryl and say, if you guys want to, trade off our veterans and get some assets, I will happily play like 10 more games the rest of the year. And like, it's pretty common for, superstars in this type of situation to like have something pretty minor and just like milk it throughout the rest of the year. Right. Like we saw that 2 years ago with the Warriors, where obviously Steph had like a really serious injury, but really took his time getting back, and Draymond was into the lineup and took his time getting back, and stuff like that. I think that there's plenty of examples where it doesn't have to be a binary of like Embiid suffers some serious injury, then you tank, or if he doesn't, you keep going for it. It could just be a situation where Joel feels a little worn down and he signs off on this plan and he knows they're not going anywhere anyway. Could be something like that. But I think what you're really touching on comes down to Embiid. If Embiid gives it the thumbs up, then you do it. And if he's at all frustrated by it, you don't do it.
Let's go back to the Tobias Harris thing for a second, because Mike and I have debated about his value, which I think is seriously negative. And Mike thinks, Mike, just to sum up your thoughts, there's got to be one team that doesn't think it is. And there would be one. Where do you feel like the cost is? It cost them 1 first-round pick to get off of Horford, for context. Now they had to get off of Horford, and everybody knew they had to get off of Horford, so maybe that's why it cost it. But I guess what's your thought on Tobias' value?
I think it would be similar, but I think that whoever you trade him for is probably also has negative value, right? Like it's not
right.
It's not like you're trading Tobias for Damian Lillard and you have to throw in 9 first-round picks or 20 first-round picks. But the example I gave was Kevin Love, right? Where Kevin Love, negative asset. Like he's played, I think, 100 games in the past 3 years combined, and he is not a happy camper. He has 2 years left on his contract, and Cleveland's also trying to win right now. So I think that it would make a lot of sense to get, like, Tobias has this year and 2 more years. Kevin Love has this year and 1 more year. You make that trade. You go into next year with Kevin Love on an expiring. It'd be really easy to ship him off somewhere, use him as salary filler in a trade. That's the type of thing that I think they could go for, is finding another toxic contract that's, maybe a year shorter or 2 years shorter. And maybe they have to sweeten the pot. Maybe they don't, but I think that's what you could get.
Or with just like different weaknesses, right? Like someone that is willing to shoot more, but maybe isn't like, standing up against Tobias's defense has gone down this year. I think obviously so without Ben, he has a tougher cover generally, but someone who's worse on defense, you're like, okay, but at least they're shooting,
I think you could make the argument that Kevin Love, like the Sixers would be, I'm being honest, just like everybody else, I've barely watched Kevin Love over the last 3 years. That said, he's a more willing shooter. He's a better rebounder. Like, I think you could make the argument that next to Embiid, they could be better with Kevin Love on the court than Tobias Harris.
You're not going to hear me defend Tobias Harris at all, man. I texted you, Spike, this. I had this realization that, like, Tobias plays basketball like he's like afraid to do anything that would upset the other team. That's like how he plays. Like he doesn't sell contact on fouls. He'll never like bait somebody into a bad pass on defense. You never see him like manipulate the defense on offense and like to set up another pass. I don't even think I've seen him like throw a head fake. Like he plays basketball like it's illegal to operate under false pretenses. Like
no tricks,
no tricks, none at all. And he's like, he is the opposite of like a Draymond or a Marcus Smart, where they're like constantly doing sneaky shit to get under your skin. Tobias is just like the most upstanding moral citizen, like follow the honor code, letter of the law to a T. Like they live in the gray area. Tobias has never been to the gray area. I'm so like, for someone like, you just want to see people on your team try and do like whatever it takes to win. And to see Tobias operate as if it's like every basketball game is just like a contest of who can dribble into the most 14-foot fadeaways and like not piss anyone off. It is a brutal watch, man. I'm so done watching him play basketball. Sorry to railroad that discussion.
No, he's definitely a frustrating player. And last year, his percentages were so high that it made up for some of his choices and just the kind of style of basketball he plays with. And when he's not hitting like all the sort of like tough leaners that he's not getting contact on, it really exposes how unhelpful he is all the time.
Empty gyms, man. Empty gyms. I at some point I would love, obviously scoring is down this year, but there's other reasons. The officiating. I still keep going back to, because Embiid Embiid's obviously still great, but his mid-range seems so out of balance last year. I just think the empty gyms, it has to have had an effect on something. And Tobias seems like an empty gym guy to me.
So let me ask you something. Back to the Embiid stuff. Like, even if there's no Ben trade, the Sixers are still really, when Embiid is playing, they're good. It's just like pretty much as simple as that. A lot of times, Derek wrote a great piece about how bad Matisse is on the court with Embiid. But pretty much you surround him with enough guys that can do a little bit, and they're still a good team. When he's off the court, they're helpless. But pretty much that's the way it is. Even you can substitute them for anybody. But if Embiid's there, they're good. In a world where he just keeps, even if he's not materially getting better season to season, like you're not seeing him, he's getting older, he's picking his spots more, he's understanding more, his brain is developing as a basketball player from season to season, and the more times you just go to the playoffs and have some successes and some failures, it is good for like those types of superstars to do. And in a world where we're still like in chaotic COVID stuff, I just got the Woj tweet that Kevin Durant is out in health and safety protocols, and there's just like hundreds of players happening in a world where it's like everything is just so out the window and anything could happen. Like, you have Embiid, he's a championship level player, hasn't been there yet, obviously, but like could just like take over. Are we throwing away the 2% possibility that Embiid just goes on a tear, Danny and Korkmaz and Seth and whoever get hot shooting in the playoffs, and they get the right matchups and the right guys get hurt or out with COVID at the right time, and they just like have a chance to actually make a run? And are we being too processy right here to even consider the idea that with an Embiid in his prime doing this is abandoning that small percentage chance?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it all kind of boils down to what you care about as a basketball fan. I can't fault anyone who would want to just see like an amazing player try and carry a team and maybe win a playoff series. I will say, I think we kind of saw the ceiling of that last year with Jokic, right? Where he had an MVP season. He was unbelievable, just didn't have enough supporting cast and got trounced in the second round, right? And, you just can see it so clearly when like in that series against Phoenix, where like they go up against a much more complete team, and especially a center, it's just so hard for those guys to carry that deep into the playoffs. So I definitely hear what you're saying, and like it would be awesome to watch Embiid average 32 and 12 for the last 3 months of the season and win a playoff series. It'd be amazing. And that is, I think, the biggest thing that you would be missing out on if you decide to stealth tank. But that's the trade-off, right? It's, do you want to have the chance to watch that, or do you want to increase your championship odds over the next 3 years? No wrong answer, honestly.
The Eagles game was moved from Sunday to Tuesday. Obviously, the Eagles have great success in the history of Tuesday games. A lot of good memories there. If you want to go to the game, if you want to take your ass to the game, SeatGeek is where you go to get your tickets. You can get in right now, $72, section 231, row 10. Now, is that a good deal or not? SeatGeek tells you. It's the only place that tells you whether it's a good deal or not. They score all the deals from 1 to 10, red to green. What else am I looking at? If I want if I want to sort by, you can sort by deal score, right? So I'm going to sort by deal score. That's the best one. $120 gets me into section 132. Anyway, there's a lot of places on the internet to buy tickets, but there's only one good place on the internet to buy tickets, and that is SeatGeek. Everything, sports, concerts, comedians, whatever. There's a lot of ticket resellers. Just go to SeatGeek because it takes all of them, puts them in one place, and tells you what's a good deal. Like, why would you want to use any other place? If that isn't good enough for you, then we've got $20 off. Use code RTRS at SeatGeek.com or the app. Download the SeatGeek app. Use promo code RTRS. You get $20 off your first SeatGeek order. So if you want to go to the game Tuesday night, if you couldn't go on Sunday, but you want to go on Tuesday night, SeatGeek. You want to go to a concert coming up, next year, this summer, whatever, SeatGeek. And like I said, if you want, you can Google ticket sites, and you're going to find 7 million of them, but they're not going to do what SeatGeek does, and they're not going to care about you the way that SeatGeek does. Once again, promo code RTRS for $20 off your first SeatGeek order. SeatGeek, SeatGeek, SeatGeek. Mike, I talked about the concept of this sort of thing also increasing Maxi's trade value. Like every time Embiid isn't playing, it becomes the Maxi show. And I think the Maxi show, I'm not comparing him to MCW in terms of like skill or ceiling, but you can see what it does, right? And it doesn't seem to, when Embiid isn't there, lead to winning very much. I do wonder how much the math of all of this affects his value, his trade market value, because we really have no idea what the Sixers are up against in terms of a trade for one of these guys, whether it's Beal or Lillard or even Harden or whatever it is. I think you need every cent you can get. And I wonder what the value of Maxi doing that for the rest of the year is.
I think there's definite value there, and it's not just his trade values that it would help him get better, right? I mean,
right.
If he can just go out there and shoot pull-up threes without having to worry about, does the math check out on this? Those reps are really valuable. So yeah, for him to average 23.5 points a game for the last 2 months of the season, I definitely think would raise his trade value, and he wouldn't be the first guy to fool some people into thinking he's better than he is in those types of stretches, like you said. I don't know if Maxi is in the long-term plans. I don't know if Daryl just views him as a trade chip. I have no idea. But I think that either way, there's definite value there. It'll raise his trade value. It'll help him get better. That's one of those little, like, there's the big picture benefits of, like, it allows you to retool and trade bias, whatever. All this stuff is definitely valuable too. You get to find out what Maxi is. You get to find out if Isaiah Joe is an NBA player. You get to find out if B-Ball Paul is an NBA player. That type of stuff.
I hadn't thought about the Isaiah Joe stuff and the B-Ball Paul stuff too.
God, Isaiah Joe, who I love, he
looks terrified.
He passed up some fucking open threes against Brooklyn, and if he's catching Sixers disease when, like, his whole deal was being an unconscious shooter, he's passing them up. I just can't deal with it. So I just need him to keep shooting and prove that was a pretend thing.
Can I I hate talking about coaches, but when the guy doesn't know if he's going to get pulled from the rotation because he misses a shot, like, I think it helps cause something like that. Like, he didn't look scared at all at the beginning of the year, and he does look scared to take shots, and he's in and out of the rotation so much. Like, I just wonder whether 10 games of guaranteed rotation minutes, what that would do for Isaiah Joe, like, not being scared that he get pulled out of the rotation.
Yeah, I definitely think that would help him. But it sucks that he hasn't emerged because, there was a lot of hype behind him in preseason, and it's not just him, but, like, they're just getting nothing out of their wings right now between him, Danny, Matisse, Korkmaz. They just, like, there's so little production in between Maxi and, like, Tobias and Embiid. You're just getting, like, nothing out of that twos and threes. It's just brutal right now. And I don't know, Isaiah Joe, Mike dropped a take that I'm very jealous of, which is that, like, if you hit yourself in the head with a hammer, you might see Devin Booker. And I wish I had thought of that.
I see it.
I was going to say
hard, but I could see it.
I even said that he could be Gary Trent Jr. I thought that was like,
I love Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah, I mean, just gunners who are not afraid to shoot and can handle a little bit. And he's just been a disappointment, man. I think that's a good point about Doc, that he's not giving him any type of leash, but definitely expected more regardless.
Yeah, I mean, back to Maxi, like, I'm just less concerned about trade value with Maxi. There's so many guys on this team that you can trade for, like, little pieces if you decide to rebuild first or retool for a season if Embiid gets hurt. I'm just like, they need he's the only guy on the roster that does anything like what he does. And he is young and cost controlled and exciting, and people love playing with him and people love watching him. And I'm just not in a rush to to trade a guy that has gotten that much better year over year. Unless it's for like the ultimate, like if it's for Lillard and Lillard next year, like looks like this, like how many years of Lillard versus like a long developing career of Maxey as you're figuring it out. And I don't think Maxey should have to be the second guy to Embiid right now. And that's what he's kind of having to be because of the failings of the roster. But like, he's really good. He's just a joy to watch. And the idea that we would only play him just to be like, well, then increase his trade value. Like if someone blows you away with an offer, like of course you consider it. But like, I'm just not going into anything if I'm Daryl thinking like, okay, how can I trade Maxey for like at the height of his value now? Because he's great.
That's not what I'm saying. But I do think two things. One, as was proven in the Harden trade, every little advantage you can have in terms of value is important. And like we have no idea who is going to be in on these trades and who we're going to be competing with. And if we're competing with teams that are, and who knows if a player would want to go to these teams, but if we're competing with, there are teams that have like a lot of fucking picks right now, like whether it's New Orleans or Oklahoma City or Houston or whatever it is. And I think that every inch that you can get in terms of value to make that team think that they're getting the best deal from you, especially when the value of 25 is like, I think we discovered in the Harden situation, it was probably not quite as high as we thought it was then, even though it was higher then than it is now. And I just think you need everything. I'm not talking about just trading for some player, but if you're going to try to win a championship with Embiid, like it's all got to be in the next 3 years. Like everything that we concentrate on has got to be in the next 3 years. And if sending him out in a trade gives him a better chance in the next 2 or 3 years, which I think is a real possibility, then I think you have to consider it.
So that ties into, the rest of the discussion as far as what like a stealth tank season could do for you, where, like we just said, raises Maxey's value, makes him a better player. You're also adding to the pot that you have to trade. You're adding whatever you get for Danny Green and company, whoever else, whatever veterans you trade. You're adding the long-term flexibility that would come with trading Tobias for someone on a shorter contract. You're adding potentially, like a mid-lottery pick if you do end up fully tanking. You're adding like the knowledge of what Isaiah Joe could be or whoever else. So there's just like these little things that you can add into a trade, and you would go into next season with Embiid, Maxey, whatever you get for Ben, your late lottery pick, and just like all kinds of long-term flexibility. I brought this up, like if they trade Ben and Tobias without taking on long-term cap stuff, 2023, they have 2 max spaces again, which might sound like it's super far away, but it's really not. And, so you just add these little things like you're saying, and those are really important.
Do you consider if they do I don't think they're going to, but it's fun to talk about, and the team is boring and bad. Do you consider Matisse someone that you would go, okay, great, let him just like shoot 8 threes a game and dribble his ass off and make the mistakes that he can make, and as he improves on offense, would you consider that like with Maxey as the wing there, or would you consider like trading Matisse while he's still in his rookie deal before you have to consider giving him like a weird full contract and seeing what you can get for him?
Yeah, I would consider trading Matisse for sure. I'm worried about the lack of just any kind of development on the offensive side. Yeah. And it's it's not just offense. It's like, is he different in any way from when he was a rookie, right? Like one thing maybe you would have liked to see is like, could he have added a bunch of muscle to defend bigger guys and like maybe start to guard like the KDs of the world and like those types of guys? His body is exactly the same. His skill set is exactly the same. And he's going to turn 25 in March, right? I think that's right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's some team that loves him. I would consider that. I think I mentioned to one of you guys, I forget which one I texted this to, but like Danny Green and Matisse for Talen Horton-Tucker or something like that.
You've mentioned that to me. You're big on them trading Talen Horton-Tucker.
They have to trade Talen Horton-Tucker. There's no question. And I don't know. I feel like Danny is somebody they could really use. Matisse, they might see the upside of his defense. And THT, I think, has some value. So I don't know, something like that.
Would you trade? I don't think this would happen, but would you trade Tobias Harris for John Wall?
Oof. When does John Wall has one more year after this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do it.
And
Yeah,
then,
for sure.
and then, last thing for me, and Beal has not had a good year either, but has I think before the year, at least for me, even though I like Bradley Beal a lot, I thought the difference between Lillard and Beal in terms of that guy was a significant difference. Like they were on different planes of who they were. But with Lillard's age and not being good this year, I wonder if I think about it differently. How close do you have those guys in terms of value if you were to go after one of them? And would it still be Lillard, which I think you would have picked Lillard before the season?
Yeah, I would say it's actually pretty close, especially given Beal's age and at this rate he has a better injury trajectory. I mean, he's had issues in the past, but I'm worried about Lillard's abdomen situation. I think it's Beal's 28, right, and Lillard's 31.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
I think
yes.
So,
yeah. So just 3 more years of a superstar in his prime.
And also
Lillard,
5 inches. Like he's just able to handle. Like he's just Beal's not an excellent defender. He can be good when he needs to be, just like kind of most star wings are and can be.
He has stopped in the last several years, but I think he is capable. He was capable
for sure. But Lillard is always going to be a negative. He's always going to be a negative as a point guard. And so it's like before the season I had them pretty close, and I would say they're even closer. Maybe Beal's surpassed him. It's just sort of the reality of how quickly small guards age and become problematic.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Mike, do you want to stick around for the mailbag and the hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week?
Sure.
What a fun season.
Yeah.
What a fun season we're doing. It's a blast.
The one thing that we're not facing, I think Mike, maybe you are facing it, but is that there's a chance, right? Like there's a chance they get a star and it wraps up and we, have our process pennant, and it was the right thing to do and all that. But more likely than not, it's fucked. And it's such a sad thing that the last 5 years of this have been such a disaster in so many different ways, from the GMs to the fucking weird shit that happened to the trades and the contracts it's just, maybe we deserved it. We were real fucking assholes at the beginning of this. Maybe we deserved it, but boy, it just seems like they're fucked. It just seems like they're fucked. And it's a bummer.
You've been there fucked for a long time. You've been wearing the we're fucked shirt since the beginning almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just so many things have happened. People are going to use that, whatever happens with this team and then Embiid and all that stuff. If say they do decide Embiid gets hurt out with like a knee contusion for like 2 months, say something like that's not crazy serious, but like enough to be like, okay. People are going to use that to be like, and the Sixers decided to tank. They're going to use that to be like, and that's why you don't do it. And it was stupid then. And it's just like, it's just fucking wrong. And people are dumb.
Yep.
Like people are wrong and dumb. Like if you're like, if you start making a recipe and then in the middle of the recipe, you just start like thrashing around in the middle and sending some ingredients out and rubbing some on your fucking face and like spitting everywhere. And then you make the thing and you're like, I told you it wasn't going to be good. I told you that your recipe, your little pot roast wasn't going to be good. It's like, yeah, well, maybe all the thrashing and stupidity in the middle shouldn't have happened. Maybe that's part of it, but people are dumb and they're going to say that whatever they're going to say.
Let me say this. I've heard you say something similar to this, Spike, but like, I kind of just view this as like really interesting. Like I'm not in like any type of a, like diehard fan mode where I'm like living and dying with every game. Like this is all just like very interesting to me. I just like talking about it. But I will say that I think another benefit of the stealth tank season is that it would give everyone a little mental break. I think everyone could use it. Like
I would love a tank.
Like the way that the Warriors talked about after 2019, like it was kind of nice to have some time off. That's like not the team. I'm talking about like us. I'm talking about like the fans. Like I think we could use a little break. We could use like a stretch of like no expectations, none at all. None at all. And that's I think what has been the most crushing thing over the past 4 years is just like every year the expectations and the drama is just like nonstop. And I think we could all just use like a little reset, feel a little rejuvenated. Nobody has to watch Tobias Harris anymore. Still have Embiid, still have all these great assets that everybody likes. Ben is gone, all that stuff. I think we all could use a little break.
Have Daryl on mid-tank.
Totally true. That's 100%. That fact above all else is like 100% true. And I talked about it when I was on Spinsters last week, but it's just like, since they won 16 games at the end of that season, Ben's rookie season, the expectations have been through the roof. Mm-hmm. The expectations would never calm down. And it's just like, that's really hard in Joel's first full season and Ben's rookie season to be like, you guys now it's time. And then ownership and several GMs worth of people treated it like it was, okay, it's time to go. And, all the shit happened. But like, it is exhausting. And to just like give everybody a break would definitely be nice.
I'm very jealous of the Cavaliers right now, who are both young, and they're young and fun and good and have no expectations. They were unexpectedly good, which is the best kind of good to be. And the last thing I want to say about the stealth tank, because I was texting about this with you, Mike, I want to see it because I want to let Daryl Morey cook. I don't want to see Daryl have to shoehorn Tobias and Embiid and whatever CJ McCollum into trying to be a championship contender. I would love to see, peel back, get some flexibility, get some assets, and just see what Daryl does with it. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, in the Hinkie discussion, I forget, Spike, you might have said this. I forget, somebody said it, where it was like, Daryl will be successful. This was Hinkie talking to, I think, Pablo.
Yeah.
Daryl will be successful if you give him enough time. And if it's the thing working against him in time is not like fan patience or ownership impatience, it's Embiid being healthy. And I feel the responsibility of like, we have to maximize it. But maybe for the long-term health of Embiid, as you said, is like, take a little injury, write this season off as like a massively fucked season for several reasons, and you try to lengthen that window so Daryl would have enough time with a in his prime Joel.
Before we get to the hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week and at least one mailbag question, LL Pavorsky Jewelers. Now, at least one Mike on this podcast has gotten engaged to his fiance with an LL Pavorsky jeweler ring. The question is, when is it time for the other Mike?
I'm 26. I'm very happy with where I'm at in life. I am going to decline to comment for fear of who could be listening.
Okay. 26. I don't know who's that young. Jesus.
Yeah, he's a baby. Yeah. Don't worry, it'll age you. We'll still all be here fucking 5 years. You'll be past your prime by that point. Hopefully you'll be engaged. You have a week left until Christmas. LL Pavorsky Jewelers is where you'll want to go shopping. That is, if you want to get engaged, maybe Christmas Eve, that would be romantic. Maybe New Year's Eve, you want to get engaged, that'd be romantic. You just got to hit up LL. And if you just need a regular gift, well, not regular like a toaster, but regular like jewelry, not engagement ring, LL Pavorsky is where you go. Mike got his engagement ring from LL Pavorsky Jewelers. Mike O'Connor is right on the borderline to doing it. LL is where you got to go. 215-627-2252. By appointment only in store, and especially for the engagement rings, because it's good for him to get information from you before you go there. And by the way, don't worry about, I only have this much to spend. I only have that much to spend. Lee has helped our listeners from every sort of spend category. So he's got you, man. 215-627-2252. Lee at llpavorsky.com. The store is at 707 Walnut, more than 30 years. Come on. Or tweet at him at llpavorsky. He's worth a follow, especially for during Sixers games. He's as emotional as any of us. Always a supporter of our fine charities as well. LL Pavorsky Jewelers
tanked Jake's entire childhood so he could win several jewelry championships.
The hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week. There are two of them. One is just a chuckle, and the other one is a real question. The chuckle came from Maddie B. And this is from the last pod, and you need to see it to get the joke, but I thought it was spot on. Is it me, or does Mike look like a toddler that just woke up from a nap? And you had the dinosaur sweater and the hair sort of all over the place. I thought it was a good one.
Look, I'm not
It seems complimentary.
This isn't publicized. This doesn't go on YouTube. No one sees it. It's fine.
And then Jacob asked, can we get a ranking of each player on the team based on how badly Daryl Morey wants to trade them? Now, number one's got to be Tobias, right?
No, I think it's Ben at this point. I think it's pretty clearly he would like to move past it.
I think it's Tobias. I think Tobias is the antithesis of everything that Daryl Morey wants in basketball.
I don't disagree with that, but I think if he could make the trade he wants to make for Ben in the immediate sense, I think just the ease of it, I think he would feel.
I think he wants Rich Paul to stop texting him more than he wants to trade Ben.
Yeah, might be it.
So they're the top two. After that, I might put the combo of Thibault and Green.
I mean, I don't think he's trying to trade anybody else. I think he just signed Danny to that contract. It's a good contract. He has said privately that I have then said publicly that Seth is the best contract on the team. Maxi's a rookie. Everybody else, Korkmaz's contract is good. Niang's contract is good.
It could be burning a hole in his pocket.
Could be burning a hole in his pocket. I mean, Shake is a contract that has been one of the best contracts in the league because of how much production he's had for a really second round contract.
He keeps playing well this year, by the way. He keeps playing well. He continues
for sure.
To play well.
And Shake's been great this year, and he'd be so much better on a team when when he wasn't the fastest player on the court, which is embarrassing. He's slow. He plays slow. He plays even slower than most. So but his contract is so good that maybe he wants to use that as a positive asset or some sort of sweetener or something before it becomes just a regular, whatever Korkmaz gets, or even maybe a little bit more.
So as we head to the mailbag, we have a really basketball question, non-basketball question to lead it off. Just really, really taking the instructions. Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com. Blade Shield, send us a trade. It's a 4-team trade. Let's see if you can keep track of this and tell me which team doesn't do it.
If I have to when I click on here's a screenshot, and it's it goes from here's thing, and then all of a sudden looks like it's a full page length of small font trades. I'm not reading it. It's too long.
Okay. Well, I'll describe it to you.
Describe it.
It's 4 teams: the Sixers, the Pacers, the Kings, and the Blazers. Okay. Now, somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but pointing out that Morey, the team's most likely Morey to do a deal with because he's done deals with them before and knows them. Gupta with the Minnesota. Wolves, the Kings, the Rockets. Was there one more? I think I'm forgetting one. But in any case, the Sixers receive in this trade De'Aaron Fox, Karis LeVert, and Robert Covington. The Pacers receive in this trade Ben Simmons, Buddy Hield, and Marvin Bagley. The Kings receive in this trade CJ McCollum and Donatas Sabonis. And the Blazers receive Tobias Harris and Miles Turner. I don't think most of these 4-team trades are good. This one is pretty good. The Pacers basically trading Sabonis and Turner for Simmons, Hield, and Bagley. That's not bad. The Kings trading Fox, Hield, and Bagley, basically getting McCollum and Sabonis. And the Sixers with, I'm not a De'Aaron Fox guy, but getting off of Tobias Harris and getting rid of Simmons and getting Fox, LeVert, and Covington, I don't think it makes them into a championship team, but it certainly makes them exciting and good this year, I think. It makes them make more sense. Of all the 4-team trades I've seen, this is a pretty good one.
It could be worse, for sure. I wonder if Indiana would trade Sabonis and Turner and LeVert for Simmons, basically.
Right.
That's quite a bit.
LeVert expires at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Portland, I think, would probably do it. McCollum and Covington for Tobias and Miles, and then maybe they flip Nurkic somewhere else.
I'd love to get Anthony Simons in this too. Him being on the Sixers would be huge for me. my brand.
And the Kings should just do kind of whatever because they're bad and they keep being bad. The Kings having an objection to really any trade. I object to them objecting because it's like, come on, what are you guys doing? So they would lose Fox, Hield, Bagley. They've been trying to trade Hield and Bagley forever.
Mm-hmm.
And they get McCollum and Sabonis. So it would be Davion Mitchell, CJ McCollum, Tyrese Halliburton, Barnes, Sabonis, Holmes would be there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
MOC?
I think the biggest team that is a question mark for me is the Pacers, because you're just like swapping out one kind of mediocre team that's not going anywhere for another mediocre team that's not going anywhere.
That's what they want. It's just a new one.
I guess so.
Yeah. Come on,
but if they have desires to rebuild, this does not help them do it.
They never rebuild. Pacers never
rebuilding.
tank.
No. So then they would go, then you're looking at Brogdon, Hield, Simmons as a sort of jumping off point. And
a jumping off point we would have talked ourselves into 18 months ago by that.
And TJ Warren. It'd be interesting. I think that Indiana is the team who says no to this.
I think that's possible. That's their two biggest trade assets, really. Or I don't think LeVert is much of one, even though I love LeVert, but Sabonis and Turner are their two biggest trade assets. Maybe they get some picks too.
This is a light return for Simmons. De'Aaron Fox, who's very, derivative with Maxey, I believe. Maybe they can play together. He's not a good shooter. He's not that great of a creator. Speaking of someone that hasn't gotten that much better over the last couple of years, Fox kind of has just plateaued.
Not a Fox.
But to get off of Tobias's contract and make Embiid happy by bringing Covington back here, make Spike happy by bringing Harris LeVert and seeing him be somehow a top 5 player once every 8 games.
And I will brag about that. Yeah,
that's right.
You were always a LeVert guy too.
I was a big LeVert guy coming out of college. Another LeVert and Dinwiddie, two guys who both came out of college injured and fell in the draft. Those are my kinds of players. But yes, it'd be fine for all 3 teams, and the Pacers, I think, would object to it.
And the non-basketball question, an actual dating question. I've recently started dating again, and obviously using dating apps is how else does it happen today. He's using dating apps. The problem is, despite setting distance limits, I still end up dating someone that isn't very close to where I live. You see, this is largely because I live in a smaller town where people are more spread out than in a city. My question is, how far is too far to doom a new relationship? Is an hour too long of a drive? It's kind of all right if we just date on the weekends, meaning the 1 hour drive is only roughly 3 times a month. But obviously, at some point, if things go well, we're going to want to see each other more than 3 times a month. Any advice?
It's worth if it's worth it, then you could do the long distance for 6 months and do a quick move in together. It'd be quick, obviously, but I think it would have to be if you're serious, I think then otherwise it's a waste of time.
Well, I also want to say, if you're saying that you're only going to date her on the weekends, if it's an hour, if that's too far for you to drive, I don't know. To me, an hour it sucks, but if you really like her, there's no reason why you can't drive. You might have to do a lot of the driving, but there's no reason why you can't drive down there on a Wednesday after work, hang out, watch a movie, stay over, come back the next morning, go to work. What are we doing? An hour's fine.
Feels far to me. I would not like that. But I think it just has to be, you chart a graph of what,
charts.
Do you care about her more than it annoys you to drive an hour?
And the replacement level relationship that could be closer.
Yes.
Get an Audible subscription or something. Listen to books on tape or whatever on the fucking car. Let's go. Come on. Listen to the start at the beginning of the Ricky. Who knows when you started listening to this? An hour is fine. It's like if you were in the Philly area dating someone from Allentown. That's fucking fine.
But if you're starting a relationship, you don't have to date someone an hour away. It's not not the only person within an hour that is with a pulse.
Sure. With a pulse. And then finally, this is just a suggestion from Rebecca. Hey, longtime Sixers fan, medium time listener. Is it time for Zoe to rename his newsletter to the Corner 2 newsletter. We might be moving on from Simmons references soon, and I'm nearly certain, having not consulted a single analytics source, that the Sixers take the most corner 2s in the league almost always when a too slow shooter can't get open for a corner 3.
That's right.
I think, we have the opening video, which of course has a minute. There's the corner 3. I think we wait till the trade and then we maybe consider a refresh on all of it. But we don't change the opening video until the trade happens. You'd have to consult Alonzo on the newsletter.
Mike, I know you made your point about Tobias specifically, but does it frustrate you as much as it frustrates me how slow everyone on the team is outside of Maxey?
Yeah, it's insane.
Have you ever seen a team as slow? I literally haven't even looked up pace all season long because I don't want to look at it. It's upsetting to me. And then I think it was on the Iron Eagle on the Nets broadcast saying that the Sixers play the slowest pace in the league. And it's just so obviously that's the case because everyone on the team is slow. I'm melting down about it on a regular basis on the pod, off the pod. How about you?
Yeah, I mean it's the polar opposite of all the offenses we've loved over the past decade plus, right? Like the Spurs, everything is fast, quick decisions, drive, kick, and the Warriors are devastating speed and everybody's pulling the trigger around these screens, and I mean it's just awful, man. It's not the same, but it's a little bit like when they had Brett and they insisted on running everything through the elbows, and every team in the league knew exactly what they wanted to do on every possession. So they had to make 5 entry passes, and each one required a fist fight in order to get it started. And
the dribble handoffs are fist fights at this point.
Yeah. And it's just it's so not a fun watch. And you watch these other teams where it's just one ball screen and they're off. It's somebody's created an advantage and offense is flowing, and the Sixers, it's you can see someone with 6 feet of open space and you just know it's a pump fake and a dribble into nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love Shake, the still image of Shake in my mind is him pump faking and driving into someone. He's got his right shoulder in them and he's trying to hold on to the ball with his left hand, and then it falls away.
Yeah, there's some of that for sure. It is a combination, and it's look, if they played really slow but methodical and bruising and physical, then that's one thing. But they have the worst of both worlds in that they're also the worst rebounding team in the league. And it's impossible that in my mind that they've found the weakest, slowest people to surround Joel Embiid. How is it both? And the smallest, but also thick and not space enough, but not too much contact. Calm down, everybody. It's amazing the combination of badness that has sort of surrounded it, all of it at once. It's like playing a game of Twister and being so contorted in a weird way. You didn't think it's possible to have a team that slow and that bad at rebounding, but we found a way to do it. It's impressive.
Your Drummond is a fake rebounder take I'm very jealous of. It's so true.
People get mad. It's one of the few Mike takes that makes people actually mad.
People occasionally have good rebounds. Yeah, he'll occasionally make a nice offensive occasionally, but broadly, guy he got out rebounded by Omer Yurtseven the other day, repeatedly, and it's he's just not. He's not good. He's fake. He just stands there. He is there.
To get the visual representation of the slowy and doughy Sixers that Mike describes, I think you just have to look at a picture of Niang, Curry, and Harris together, and just those guys doing everything that they do, just as slow and doughy as possible. All nice guys.
Forget what other basketball feels like.
It's not just the foot speed. Also, it's Seth and Tobias have a mode about them where when they catch the ball, it's let me get in a triple threat, and I'm going to plot out this 4 dribble back down move that is going to end in a step back. It's just somebody think and move fast. The whole team, just get them some Adderall and just I want them buzzing. Come on.
I watched sometimes you watch other games and you see other guys move fast. I'm not asking for just pulling off a transition with 20 seconds left on the shot clock. I'm not asking that. Just a simple move. I watched even just athleticism. I was watching the Grizzlies game and a two-way guy, Yves Pons from Tennessee, who was awesome, elevated and just tried to dunk on somebody and went flying. And I was I haven't seen athleticism like this in generations. Just because they're just so They don't do that. Drummond did put was it Nick Claxton in the basket?
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good, but it doesn't. You don't feel no one's dunking over anybody. It's still, it has to be like a drop the shoulder first.
Also unrelated, but I did want to say shout out to corner twos because I love corner twos and I miss them aesthetically in basketball. Very partial to like a Brandon Bass like baseline corner two or
Brandon Bass would. I mean, that was his whole
whole
game.
game.
And he never missed him. He never missed him. You know who I think shot him a lot? I think Oakley shot him a lot, but Oakley might have been elbow twos.
Horace Grant shot a lot of them.
Yes.
Elton Brand.
Yes.
Sure. Kenny
Very
Thomas
partial.
from the elbow more, but in that area. My dad also shoots a lot of corner twos, so we should say.
Oh, it's such a dad shot.
He's trying to stretch his range, and he's succeeding. He turns 16. It was my mom's birthday yesterday, and it's my dad's birthday in a couple weeks, and so they're in their late 60s. But my dad's still stretching his range, still figuring it out.
That's great.
Last thing, MOC, would you trade Tobias for Russell Westbrook?
No. You got to draw the line somewhere, man. No shot.
I'm glad there's a line. It makes me feel good that you have drawn a line. Thank you.
I have some boundaries.
All right. We'll talk to you. The middle is MOC. Thank you for coming on. Your Twitter has NBA in it, I think, which I generally make fun of, but there's a couple of _NBA. When I'm making fun of the people that have NBA in their Twitter name, I'm not talking about you.
I also make fun of the people with NBA in their Twitter name.
Okay.
So I get it.
It's just a sign for somebody who isn't really in the media, but is acting like they're in the media, which I guess is this whole podcast.
It's also a sign that you know what they think about everything in basketball. Like,
right,
it's just if you ask them who is better between any two players, they'll say the player that shoots the more threes. That's all they know.
Yep. All right, we'll talk to you next time. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah. You know, like face.